Bonjour, everyone. Good evening. We have had some requests for Unity things, and Unity had a lot of speakers, people who weren't maybe necessarily Unity, but who would come through. One was Marcus Bach, and he wrote just a plethora of books. And it was funny, I was looking for him in here, and of course, right? But of course, he, why does that always pop up, right? Why does that always pop up? Rockefeller Fellowship. There we go. I had no clue when I was going into this. I just want, now why, okay, now here's something he wrote. It's funny because everything was really scholarly until we hit 1973. And then things get, I think someone in here wrote they could have used some more bitters from him. This was probably one of those, The World is a Unicorn type books. And prior to that, everything was quite scholarly. But you'll see why. You'll see why, because Marcus Bach had a nephew, and his nephew's name was Richard, and Richard wrote, Richard had a lot of trouble. Richard had written a book, one book, not many, just one. He was the nephew, he was quite young, and he'd gone around to very many publishers, and they were all rather disgusted with him because he wanted to write a serious book about life and philosophy from the perspective of a seagull. And it was very, very hard for him to get it published or to get anyone to, have anything to do with him at all. There was another person who was kind of around at that time. I couldn't find his book. This was the most I could find. And the scroll opened, and George Lomsey, he was sort of extremely intellectual. And here, for a quick interlude, there's the Unity Church before it was torn down. And here's a good perspective of it. And yes, somebody wrote in, thank you, and let me know it had been torn down. That's where I used to hang. My dad he was the associate there. This is where he started. And this was a little pool you could throw pennies in. And it's now been replaced by the Darth Vader thing. Wow, I feel like AI really did come in and go, what's going on here? Let's just make a big mess of everything. So oddly, it's weird, isn't it, in life, like what can affect you and what doesn't. But Marcus was very affected and very upset, deeply upset by the fact that he had written so many books, and his nephew wrote this silly, seagull book. Not only did it hit #1, become this icon that everybody seemed to have, and everybody bought the poster, and it was everywhere you looked. But then Neil Diamond fell in love with the book, and he wrote songs about the seagull. And he wrote a whole movie. You may find him. And Marcus was so upset with the universe. How could the universe do this to him? That He would write, he would study, he would travel the world. He would know more about all religions than anyone else he ever met. And his silly little nephew writes one book about a seagull, and the whole world just goes wild, and he becomes immortal in this intense way, and he didn't even ever want to talk to his nephew again. It was almost as if his nephew had written that book just to drive him to some kind of insanity or something. And it took famous Amos having to do a little sneak meeting at his house. And this was after like 30, 40, whatever years. You know, it didn't, the reunion wasn't until like, 2000 and something. And finally it occurred in this way where nobody was to know. I'm looking here to find the house for you so you can see where it went down. Where did all the healing go down? Where he said, look, Uncle, I didn't write this to put you down. I just wrote it. There it is. I just wrote it because I wrote it. It may have actually been about a friend of his who was a pilot. I don't know if the seagull stood for something else. But there you go, huh? Just wild. So there's a page that aches for a word which speaks on a theme that is timeless. I'm glad they were able to reunite. But there's a little unity story for you. And I was going through this, I was seeing prosperity consciousness and tithing, and I had filmed something last week and now I can't find it, where there was kind of a Marxist church here with a fist, and I thought it's interesting how we have this Hegelian thing of one end you've got these prosperity, the wealth ministry, and then you've got the Marxist, the kind of poverty oriented one, and but they're both kind of going after the same thing, aren't they? Jesus was a millionaire. There actually was a book called that. So much love, everyone. Neil Diamond, don't be too mad at me here for using your song, but we've got a story to tell, and you're the one who told it best. So, everyone, sleep tight and soar. Don't let anything hold you down.